Right, we are live. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the Kiwi Lads channel. We are here for the All Blacks first squad announcement of 2024. Scott Robertson, the question mark is, who is he going to be selecting in his side? 32 men will be selected in the squad, 18 forwards, 14 backs, and it is in around 30 minutes time. So before that, we are going to be looking through at each position, deciding who are the best, options for each role for this upcoming series. And up against the English, they are playing in only 12 days. So there won't be a lot of time for getting prepared, but they will have to make sure that they are match ready. We've just seen the Super Rugby Pacific final that was a little bit more one-sided than a lot of people did anticipate, as you can see here. 41 points to 10 in favour of the Blues. They were the home side, though. That's the only thing that needs switched there, but they were in fine form, and perhaps a couple of them could have played themselves into that AB's jersey, but also maybe a couple injuries could be around for certain players. Now, one in particular who I'm looking at the moment for an injury is definitely Caleb Clarke. Unfortunately, that man did go down with a bit of a rib injury near the end of that game, and I feel like that final probably cemented him a spot in the All Blacks if he is match fit. Now, of course, I mentioned that they're playing in 12 days. They are also playing in 19. That will be the second match up against the English, who did have a warm-up game up against the Japanese over the weekend, getting themselves a relatively comfortable victory in that one. And then the last game, it is New Zealand versus Fiji. But do not be fooled by New Zealand being the home side, because they are not. Neither are Fiji. They are heading to the US of A to play that contest. It's going to be a very exciting one. But do let me know, ladies and gentlemen, who are your bolters for this All Black squad? We know that Scott Robinson is in charge, and he is going to have to make the big decisions of who they add in, who they take out from what we saw in that Rugby World Cup. There are a couple young guys at the moment who are definitely in the running and have a lot of potential of making it into this All Black squad. Now, we did ask the question on the poll before the start of this live stream, which Super Rugby team will have the most All Blacks involved? And the Blues are winning very comfortably at the moment. 68% of the votes did go in favour of the Blues. Second place is the Crusaders. Of course, Scott Robertson has a little bit of a, I guess you could say, loyalty situation that he might have to bounce off a little bit. He would have seen a lot of these guys right from the start of their careers at the Crusaders. We're talking about someone like a Cullen Grace or maybe Ethan Blackadder. He's another one that people have been mentioning as a possibility of making it into the All Blacks. The Chiefs are actually also on 14% now. And, oh no, they've dropped down to 13, and the Hurricanes are on 5%. Now, of course, Hurricanes have had a pretty strong season. Unfortunately, up against the Chiefs in that semi-final, they didn't quite perform in the way that a lot of people thought that they would. But when you look through at that forward pack, Xavier Numia, if he was match fit, I think he would have been in there. Safa Moore, Tyrell Lomax. You know, you look at that locking duo, are we going to see an Isaiah Walker-Leawere because of that extra size that he does offer to this All Black side? And 5:30, I think, says Vanessa May, it certainly is. For when the squad is being announced, forgot the name of the Hurricanes number 8. You're probably thinking Braden Yossi in that case, and I do hope he gets the opportunity. The only problem they've got at the moment is there are so many 8s that are in contention, whether that is Satutu or whether that is Satiti. Like, there are guys that could take that jersey, even if it's Savia. You know, when we talk about ex-Hurricanes players or current Hurricanes, but of course playing over in Japan, hoping for Peter Lakai to get named. I hope so too. That's the thing. Are they going to play Savia as an 8 or are they going to play him as a 7? Because if they play him as an 8, I think that Peter Lakai and Dalton Papali'i will probably be the two loose forwards for the number 7 jersey that they go with. The benefit you've got with someone like a Braden Yossi is the fact that he does offer all 3 positions. And when you talk about versatility, that is normally something that can be extremely important for a side. Definitely in a short series like this, you know, send him to the USA, see how he ends up going. Braden Yossi, I'm for Peter Lakai to get named. And Lakai says K-Dog NZ, and Isaiah Walker-Leawere has too many handling errors throughout the season. It's probably not him, says Tane. I agree. I don't think I'd personally have him in. But someone made a very good point to me about England, the fact that they normally go with quite a large forward pack. And when you look through at the locks that are available, I mean, there aren't too many bigger than Isaiah Walker-Leawere, but he just doesn't seem like he's had enough of a standout season to be able to take on one of those locking jerseys. I think like a Sam Darry maybe could be the more likely if we're talking about a new option in that locking duo. If Caleb Clarke gets in, it's shocking. In what regard would it be shocking, JP Travels? Just out of curiosity, because I've got some of his stats here for Caleb Clarke throughout the season, and he has been absolutely phenomenal on paper. He's had the most running meters, I believe, out of any player in Super Rugby Pacific. He got himself a hat-trick in the final. He's also had the most clean breaks out of any player. I think that might have been the one, in fact. Not the most running meters, but most clean breaks out of any player throughout this season. And he's been a really solid option at 11 for the Blues. In fact, I would argue that Caleb Clarke, if he's match fit, is probably more likely to get into the squad than Mark Talia, if you're looking at the head-to-head in terms of what they've done. That is how strong of a season I believe Clarke has had. Do you think England fancy their chances? I think they absolutely will. At the end of the day, we saw how South Africa played in their game up against Wales. That was with a lot of familiar faces for the Springboks, but they still needed that time to adjust. The benefit England have, they played last week. So they have got some sort of match experience under their belt, whereas the All Blacks, they are coming into this with, of course, a Super Rugby season just beside them, but at the same time, they haven't had that chemistry building that they may need, depending on who we see in these sides. Of course, we could see a real mix of Super Rugby Pacific side. Will you be showing them, reading the names? I believe it's on YouTube and NZR+2. We will indeed be letting you know as it takes place, and then we will be popping it up on the screen just a little bit afterwards as well. Probably shocking because it looks like he was injured, says Stone Cold. Yeah, that's the thing. Rib injury, I don't know the extent of it. It looked like he was partying afterwards, but that was probably a pretty painful time for Caleb Clarke. I think Savi is a tad too slow for the 7. And Billy Proctor over Quintal Pye, says Tane. And we've had more Blues players than the ABs in the last couple more years. It hasn't gone well. Says Trajan, can Richie Mo'unga be selected since he's been playing in Japan? Now, I'm a little bit confused about the Mo'unga situation because I thought he wasn't eligible to play, but he has played one club rugby game or something along those lines in New Zealand. So I'm wondering whether or not that somehow, I don't think he can get selected. Razor, of course, would like to have him. I saw quite an interesting interview about how Richie Mo'unga was very confident after having a great game, scoring about 25 points. Razor said to him, yeah, but you conceded about 14 with your missed tackles. So it'll be interesting if that is the dynamic, but I do feel like when we talk about those fly halves, you know, I'd love to see Harry Plummer get the opportunity after the way that he played in the final. He just seemed really calm under pressure. And Ricky won 2 super titles, one with the Hurricanes, says Kit. And also, who would you choose as the third choice option for hooker to replace Taukiaho? That is a great question. And for me, I think there's 2 men in the running at the moment, and that is either going to be the bolter of George Bell as the young crusader, or it's going to be Ricky Riccitelli as a little bit more of an experienced head. And plus, when you look at how he's played throughout the Super Rugby Pacific season, Riccitelli certainly does deserve that opportunity. You've also got that other side of things, though, that Ricky Riccitelli will be about 33 by the next World Cup, whereas George Bell will be mid-20s. Take Clarke over Talia, but we must have Reece. Nobody works harder for 80 minutes than him. And Clarke goes missing on D and is one-dimensional, saying that he seems to want it bad, says JP Travels. And yeah, I think Reece is, for me, one of the confirmed wingers. You know, there are so many good options at the moment. They've got the 4 in the running, I believe, or in fact, you could almost say the 5 at the moment, and that is Sevu Reece, Mark Talia, you've got Amoni Narawa, Atenai Nanasatoro, and also Caleb Clarke. And only 3 of those men, I believe, can be selected, unless they try and get the technicality of Atenai Nanasatoro can also cover 15. That might be something that helps them out a little bit more. But then who are the 15s that we're going to see? Are we going to see Stevenson, Love, Barrett? Who's going to be that number 15? That Razor and Mo'unga scenario was back in the days when Mo'unga was still coming through as a youngster. It was indeed. Since then, they developed a pretty strong friendship. It seems to be the case with most of the players that Robertson does have in his Crusaders side. And Jordan being injured, bring Bodie back into contention, which is a backwards move. Has he actually been world class in the last 5 or 6 years? The thing with Beauden Barrett is he has times where he plays well, and people, I don't think, give him much credit when he does play well because of the fact that there are the occasional games where he doesn't really look great, if that makes sense. But, you know, having that experience at the back might be very handy for the All Blacks here. Definitely if you've got Ruben Love and Sean Stevenson, who at the moment both are nursing injuries. Love, I believe it is the knee injury. Stevenson, it's the hamstring. Beauden Barrett, the benefit he's got, he's been playing in Japan, so he's fresh for this series up against the English. But yeah, it will be an interesting one to see which way they do end up going. Second choice option for first 5-8, I'd honestly go with Harry Plummer. I think that the way that he played throughout the Super Rugby Pacific final, I mentioned it on my last video as well. I said that He went from a player most people weren't even selecting in their Blues starting lineup to being that guy that you had to have in the starting lineup for the Blues, and he just showed that throughout the final, that the pressure wasn't getting to him. And yes, it wasn't a very close game, so that probably helped a little bit, but at the end of the day, I feel like, he should be there. I would be quite sad if the only reason Beauden Barrett gets into the side is because he is there for Harry Plummer. But that depends on what Beauden's intentions are. Does he want to be a fly half or does he want to be a fullback? What happened to lunchtime namings? Did they need Big and Mule? Says Andy Surfer. I think it's just with the timing. The Rugby Championship, I believe, is normally around lunchtime, but this one, I think it was just because of the convenience of having it a little bit later. It was syncing up with the breakdown as well, which I think is now a thing that they have been doing, so that is why it's a little bit later on. The Māori All Blacks, I believe they will be announced on around Wednesday this week, and that will be probably more than likely around a lunchtime one. Jordan being injured, I read that one. What about Otino Sotoro as a bolter? Cover wing fullback, says Stone Cold. He could be in there. That's the thing. There are a few great bolter options at the moment. He is one. I think in terms of that backline, does Billy Proctor count as a bolter? I guess he would in a way because, he hasn't had many opportunities at the highest level. He's played a few games for the New Zealand Māori, of course, but is he going to get that call up to the ABs, and who will that be for? Because I think that at the moment, Quintal Pai and maybe Rieko Ioane are the two that people are thinking could get chopped and changed, but Ioane with that experience, I think that he will be there. Plummer is the form 10, should be picked on form, and that is something that a lot of people are waiting to see for Scott Robertson. Is it going to be based off form, or is it going to be based off name? And I think if we see Sam Cane in there, then we know exactly what way they are going and what are the Highlanders, or why are the Highlanders not in the poll. It's not so much a shot at the Highlanders, it's only the fact that I could have 4 options in that poll. Plus for the Highlanders, theoretically, at most, you're probably getting maybe 3 or 4 players from the Highlanders, that being Ethan de Groot. You're also looking probably at Folau Fakatava, although there's a few question marks around that as well. Who knows, maybe they even go with Cam Miller as an absolute bolter. I'd feel bad for Harry Plummer, though, if they ended up doing that. Timothy Tavatava-Nawai, potential bolter, says Tane. Yeah, and his work over the ball is very handy. Him and Sevu Reece, a little bit similar in that regard of them locking themselves over the ball on the wing, get the turnover. And Plummer reminds me of a guy like Anscombe, a tradesman at super level. That consistency at international level could be invaluable, says JP. And yeah, off the kicking tee, he's improved so much throughout the season. Like, yes, every once in a while he misses one that maybe he should have got, but that's happened with pretty much everyone. You could say Brett Cameron had a good regular season. See, he's had a good season, but has he had a great season and enough of a impact in his side to get him into the All Blacks? I feel like that game up against the Chiefs was one of those ones, and it even happened a little bit in the game prior as well. Like, when the pressure's on, that seems to be where Brett Cameron makes silly errors. Whereas when we look at what Plummer was able to do in those games that were a little bit tighter, he just seems to have that calmness about him. Any thoughts on Sevu getting picked? I believe he will. I mean, for the Crusaders, there weren't many players who stepped up throughout the season, but I think Sevu Reece was one of them. He, at the end of the day, still got himself 12 tries throughout the season. He got those turnovers. He made his tackles when he needed to. I can see him being in there for the All Blacks. Former reputation. What will Razor go for? Well, that is one thing that Razor, of course, will know. I know that him, Leon McDonald, and the rest of the coaching staff all gave their starting 15s, and then from there they kind of worked out how they'd make the squad around those signs. His team was top of the table, says Stone Cold, and there as well. They were, but you'd also have to argue for the Hurricanes. One of the reasons that they were top of the table, this sounds harsh, but it wasn't so much Brett Cameron. When you look through at his stats for the season, compared to a few of the other options, like the stats for Brett Cameron in particular were actually kind of average. Because trust me, I've spent hours and hours looking through at Super Rugby stats, and like he does the basic things right, Brett Cameron, but then also you look at him sometimes and you wonder, why have you done that? It was like that game that they were playing, I think it was Hurricanes, and it was in the regular season. And it was him and someone else, and it was a competition to see who could make the biggest error at the end of the game. I think he kicked it out on the full. Might have been actually up against the Blues, maybe, in that one. We have got Theo Robertson. It's going to do something. France and New Zealand are going to be dominant forces going forward in World Rugby, says Ben Parsons. Until 2027, people saying Razor is going to save Kiwi Rugby. Just hold up and let the man do his thing. He might be total rubbish in the end. Calm the farm and stop inviting karma into the conversation, says Thorfinn. See, I've already seen people saying that Vern Cotter's the next All Blacks coach for after Razor is either sacked or retires, which is, we're still a wee way away from that, I'd like to think. They've tried to get him through to that next World Cup, and I believe, he's got to build that plan. Loose forward, Savia, Sotutu, Papali, Satiti, Yossi, Lakai. Thoughts, says Timothy. I like it. I did have it very similar. I actually only had Yossi out and I had Samapeni Finau in as just a specialist 6. But on the video that I did, I got quite a few people saying that I had no idea what I was talking about in the loose forward trio. But I do like the idea of Barrett being able to juggle between lock and loose forward. Definitely up against a side like England, you need that physicality in your loose forward trio. It's just whether or not, someone like a Jacobson, I'm not sure whether he will get in for this All Black side. Don't get me wrong, he's had a good season, but his discipline, I don't think you can have him and Samapeni Finau in the same loose forward trio because they will just go penalty for penalty, and you can't really afford to have that happen in games where England will be able to take 3-pointers. And Ben Carson, I guess we'll see. And Razor can't do any worse than Fozzie, that's for sure, says Trajan. I mean, as much stick as Ian Foster got, right? His record wasn't great. His losses on home soil up against sides that have never beaten the All Blacks in a series before weren't great. But at the end of the day, they still got the silver medal at the World Cup, which is a lot further, I can guarantee you, than a lot of people thought they would get under Ian Foster. So yes, it was a poor time for New Zealand rugby, but somehow they still got themselves the runner-up of that Rugby World Cup. So, I feel like he needs a little tiny bit of praise in that regard for what he was able to do. And I know that some people will say it was just the players who did that and whatnot, but we've got to remember these are the same group of players that they didn't want Foster to go. They said that they were sticking up for him and that they were going to play for him. And, that's a bit of loyalty. And it was quite nice to see when everyone was trying to get rid of him and the players were going, no, we're keeping him. We're going through to the World Cup with him and we'll see how it goes. And only by 1 point it was tight, says Chad. And surely Artie Superman Savia is captain. See, that's the thing. There are rumours. Is it Savia? Is it Scott Barrett? Does Tui Pelotu get a shout? Is there anyone else that could possibly be that All Blacks captain? Papa Lee, people have talked about maybe as well, could be the option, although I do still think that Barrett or Savia are the two most likely to be in the running for that role. Hey, mate, says Nick, welcome in. If you are doing extremely well, Vern Cotter will be the next Wales coach. Warren Gatland is not going to last much longer. Yeah, although look at the players he's dealing with. Everyone can criticise Warren Gatland all they want, but, if you've seen the Welsh squad at the moment, and that is nothing against these young players, but, you look at them lining up against South Africa, half of them had, less than 5 caps in their whole lineup. Their whole forward pack had less caps than Eben Etzebeth alone. And then you look through at their bench, and they had, I think Gareth Davis was about the only one who had any sort of notable numbers. Everyone else was 3 caps, debut, 2 caps, debut, 1 cap, debut. It's always going to be tough when you've lost all your experienced players pretty much in one go. Islanders number 9, says Nick, so that is Falau Fakatava. There's a leak in the All Blacks, they need a plumber, says Absman there. Do you think Razor should choose Lakai and Sotutu? I honestly do think that picking both of them wouldn't be a bad idea. Just because Lakai offers you the versatility of being able to play 6 as well. The problem that they've got with Sotutu, and it's not a bad problem to have, specialist players are very handy in a squad, but the problem that they've got is he only plays 8, and he can play nowhere else. Well, at least he hasn't had to. So, when you look at someone like Sotutu, or whether, I think he's going to be there, but Lakai offers you that extra option at 6 as well, so that is one benefit that I think will help him in terms of the overall selection of the side. A runner-up due to Irish Joe and Ryan. They took a long time to stand up for him. The only reason he stayed was due to no AB's coach ever being fired. Those first 3 years were diabolical. And yes, Joe and Ryan did get a lot of credit, but at the same time, Foster still did something, I know that people love to criticise that man, and I guess he's an easy target because he doesn't fire back, and that's always one of those things that does make it very easy to criticise a coach if they're not going to you know, they're not going to yell at you or they're not going to swear at you. You know, he didn't have that situation like the Crusaders coach who called the journalist a certain word that we cannot say. But, you know, it's going to be interesting under Scott Robertson because we have to ask the same question. If New Zealand somehow lose the series to England, do people call him for his head? Are they going to say that it was a terrible idea bringing him in? You know, people are very much what have you done for them lately? And, you know, like Robertson, his record at club level speaks for itself, but now it's international and he's got to try and really get the selection right, I believe, because England will be a tough challenge because they at the moment have got, I believe, their selection right. Foster shouldn't have been appointed. I blame the process, not the man, says Rory. Exactly right. Like, to throw an assistant coach in that hadn't really had much experience at all coaching as a head coach other than a little bit for the Chiefs in the past, which didn't go too well for Foster either. Like, he wasn't the right man for the job initially, but once he was in, like, he was the guy. So you had to back him. Like, whether you liked him or not, he wasn't going anywhere. And, you know, that's what the players pretty much said as well. They said he is going to be our coach, so we've got to make do. We've got to keep on going. Cam's injury happened right in front of me, says Nick Reed. Were you the referee who got in his way? Will Fakatava make it? I don't know, to be honest, because Christie's had a few good games recently. I worry about Christie's ruck speed, though, as the one thing that might leave him out. He's in front of he's behind a brilliant four-pack, whereas Fakatava, some people say he's a little bit too unorthodox and a little bit too unpredictable. That can sometimes be a good thing, but then also alongside that, we've got to remember Fakatava didn't have that same luxury of having a forward pack that's going to just bulldoze over every breakdown. We got a £10 super sticker as well from Andy Surfer. Thank you very much, mate. Greatly appreciated for that donation. Will Artie be your 8 or Hoskins? Well, I want to know whether or not Artie's going back to 7 because, of course, he's been playing 8 in Japan. He was playing 8 for the All Blacks. But is this now the time with Sam Cane possibly stepping aside? Is this where Savia goes back to that number 7 jersey to open the door for a Satutu at number 8, or maybe a Wallace Satiti in the future, maybe a Braden Yorsi? There's a few good options. I wouldn't consider England a challenge. They've larger chinks in their armour than New Zealand, says Connor. I mean, like I mentioned though, they had a warm-up game and that is massively beneficial. Yes, they haven't played for a little while, but they didn't look too bad up against Japan once they started finding their rhythm. So, you know, I feel like that optimism or slight, I don't know, you can't be too confident nowadays in international rugby. We have seen what can happen in the game and we have seen upsets in the rugby world. And we've also seen now the new TMO law, which is going to extend games by about 10 to 15 minutes because of all of the stoppages and looking back at everything. When they announce in the team, I believe it's 5:30, but there is a chance that it's actually 6. I know that sometimes they get a little bit keen and start things at 5:30, but then they actually announce them a bit later. But I don't think it will be too many minutes into the breakdown show that we do get to see exactly who is in the lineup. We have got there, what are your thoughts on the new rugby law that when fans abuse the officials online, they get prosecuted? What are your thoughts on this new law? I think that it's very much like, it's situational. Because, of course, if you say a ref has a bad game, that's not the thing that they're going to prosecute you for. But it's when you say that you're going to go and, like, I can't even really say most of the stuff that you see, like, hurled at the referees. And it's fair enough because we've got to remember those guys are humans too, aren't they? Like, the amount of stuff throughout the World Cup that you saw on referees' social media pages, like the amount of referees that had to go onto either private or delete their social medias because of the abuse that they were getting was pretty ridiculous. Super Rugby is not club level. 7 in a row is incredible, says Dion Sands. Can you ever see a 3-test Scotland versus New Zealand series in the future? They've really come a long way with their recent dominance over England, Glasgow winning the URC and faring better than Wales, says Connor. I mean, are we even going to see 3-match series though? Like, we've got a few that are happening in July, but they're 2-match series rather than the 3. I feel like they have heavily gone away from the 3 matches. The only ones that I've heard rumouring 3 matches like recently is South Africa and New Zealand. But other than that, it just seems to be that we're trying to shorten tours and we're trying to like not have that old school 3-match type of thing. Like the Bledisloe Cup, another example of that. They decided to go to 2. And Cullen Grace hasn't been talked up, but actually was one of the most consistent Crusaders this season. The team played poorly, but he did okay as a 6. I agree. I think that, to be honest, in terms of discipline, I would take Cullen Grace over Samipeni Finau. Now, the All Blacks, they may go for the size factor because Cullen Grace, he's building at about 105 kgs, which some would argue isn't big enough to be a 6. Some would even argue isn't big enough to be a lock. But, the fact that he's also come from a locking background, I think might actually be one of the things that may push him a little bit further. But a lot of people would just go with Samipeni Finau as the easy option. But when you look through at the head-to-head stats, which in fact we have got available, ladies and gents, we'll get them up and we'll have a little look at Cullen Grace versus Samipeni Finau. Like his season, he was really strong throughout the season, and he also offers that number 8 jersey too. He can play about 4 or 5 different positions in your forward pack. Why shorten the series? More matches and more quality on show, says Connor. I think it's with the concern that sides could win 3 games if they are the favourites going into it, but I feel like you still need a 3-match series, don't you? And will Tupaia make the team considering he's on the bench of the Chiefs behind Rameka Poihipi? I think so. Is there a live feed for the actual team announcement? I see a Sky Sports one from 3 years ago. Where's today? Says SSM. I believe they're doing one on the All Blacks YouTube channel, so I would recommend checking that one out so that you can see exactly who is going to be announced. I don't think they're too far away from starting that one as well, but it's going to be interesting. See how this one does end up going. One moment, we'll go like that and like that. There we go. Will Richie Mo'unga? I don't think he's eligible for the squad, mainly because he is still playing in Japan on an extended contract. Poor Highlanders not getting in the poll. It was nothing personal. It's just YouTube only let you do 4 options. I was going to combine Crusaders and Highlanders, but then I knew that that would offend people more than not having the Highlanders in the poll. But yeah, I think for the Highlanders, the likeliness of them having any more than 3 or 4 players is very unlikely, which is why they were the side that I didn't end up putting in that poll. But here we go. Samipeni Finau as well as Cullen Grace in the head-to-head stats, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the season. Now, I have it in front of me. I cannot show you, unfortunately. Well, I could, but yeah, you can't really see it too well. Games played, both very similar. Cullen Grace having the extra game. He played 71 minutes on average. Samipeni Finau played 72. 25 points scored by Cullen Grace, coming from 5 tries. Samipeni Finau scoring 2. In terms of the running meters, Cullen Grace has a 35 running meter advantage. He also had more runs throughout the season, though, so Samipeni Finau making more meters when he's got the ball, whereas Cullen Grace getting a little bit more work in. He's had more defenders beating Cullen Grace, 11-8. More clean breaks and offloads coming for Samipeni Finau, having 5 of each, and also having a try assist. In fact, he's had 2 throughout the season. Cullen Grace has made 165 tackles with 85% accuracy. Samipeni Finau has made 140 tackles with 86% accuracy. So, they're pretty even overall. Samipeni Finau has had more penalties against him. He's had more handling errors, and he's also had a yellow card, which Cullen Grace has not. So, they could be your 2 6s. If you're going with 2 6s, they could be the 2 that are looked at. It's just whether or not Cullen Grace's size is something they consider. But I feel like Scott Robertson, from his time at the Crusaders, will know that that man does work very hard. So that might be what also helps him get into the side. We'll have to wait and see. Caleb Clark says, Karaitiana, I think we're waiting to find out whether or not he's got his rib injury that is severe enough. I haven't heard any update about that injured rib, whether or not it is going to be a big factor. Richie McCaw's coming back, just heard. Says Chris, is that to announce it maybe? Tupavai has really stepped up this season, says Timothy. I think Tui Piloto and Scott Barrett to grind the English pack will be a big win by the All Blacks, says Kit Dyer. Do you think Blackadder has a shot? He's a really intriguing one, Ethan Blackadder, because I feel like in terms of selection, right, he probably, if he gets selected, is the player who's played the least minutes throughout the Super Rugby Pacific season. He's only played 6 games. He's had 62 minutes per game, though. Yeah, it's live on All Blacks YouTube channel right now. It says I am there as well. And this this big Pom 4-pack will be salivating. A nightmare of 2003 returns, says Shane. And there as well. But looks like we're here at the breakdown now. We have just got the coverage popping up and we will be ready to go. Let you know exactly who makes it into the side. Now, last year they did it by alphabetical order. I believe this year will be the same. But it's interesting. Let me know, ladies and gentlemen, who's your bolter and who's the player you can guarantee is going to make the All Blacks. See who everyone says as the guarantees. Now, what channel is it on, says Dane? So it is on Sky Sport 1 here in New Zealand. It is also on the All Blacks YouTube channel. Alongside that, it is also on NZR Plus, I believe, is the other one that is also available for this one. It's going to be intriguing, though. Damien McKenzie, my favourite fly half, says Gahan in there. What do you think Bowden will be elected as a fly half or fullback? I would like to see him as a fullback to give the opportunity to McKenzie and Plummer as the fly halves. YouTube channel ain't streaming yet, says Junaid. And they ain't time to become the invincible, says Mr. All-In. What's your thoughts against the game against Fiji? Will they give the All Blacks a tough match? It's really hard to say, isn't it? Because it is going to be taking place in the USA. And you wonder how well these guys will be travelling after 2 weeks of hard-hitting rugby beforehand. Bolter Cullen Grace, I like it. I feel like he's got a good shot of going through. The Timaru boy, just up the road, was in my South Canterbury cricket team. Little bit of a fun fact, which I've used way too many times on these live stream. Waiting, bro, we can see, says Gahan. And there as well. Is there going to be less or more or less new players in the squad? I think we're going to see a lot of familiar faces. What are your Bolter, says Jonathan? See, there's a few good ones that could be an option, to be honest. Like, I think in the loose forward trio, Peter Lakai, I want to see him. Xavier Numia, he would be a Bolter if he wasn't injured. But sadly, he is injured at the moment. I think that in terms of, the locking duo, we might see someone like a Sam Derry. I'd love to see Harry Plummer make his way into the side. But now we're here, ladies and gentlemen. The breakdown has kicked in. They are just showing the dates of the games that are taking place between New Zealand and England. First one on the 6th of July. That is taking place at 7:05 p.m, seeing as it is a New Zealand kickoff. Proctor has to be the number 13, 3 times the package of where am I supposed to be, Ioane, says Shane. And also Ian Poster at 10 for the UAB, surely. And up the Blues and checking in from Brisbane, Hamish. Did Dad give you day off work, lol? Well, luckily we're at 5:30 p.m. New Zealand time, so it's a little bit of a later start rather than the lunchtime one, like someone mentioned earlier on. Some of the other announcements have been lunchtime timings. And late, says Hensel in there. I mean, the breakdown show was starting at 5:30 p.m, so I assume that is roughly when they're going to announce it. There's also a chance that it is a 6 p.m. announcement, depending on what happens in the plans. But yeah, it's going to be a very intriguing one to see who is in this side. Are you expecting to hear Richie Mo'unga named? I'm not, only because I don't think he's eligible for this one. But if he is selected, that would certainly be a bit of a curveball. If they started the naming, they have not yet, no. They are just all talking at the moment. Jeff Wilson, Mils Muliaina, John Kerwin, and Kirsty all having a chat. Thoughts on Kanina Holo making the squad? At the start of the season, I would have said yes. But then after that first maybe 5 or so weeks, I feel like he got overshadowed by Salisi Reasi a little bit. So that might actually be something that not only hurts Naholo, but it could also hurt Reasi, mainly because they've only had about a half a season each, if that makes sense. Oh yeah, I've got there Sir John, says James there. And where do you watch it? So it is going to be live on the All Blacks YouTube channel. Sky Sport 1 here for us here in New Zealand as well. But there it is. Who's in the crowd? I'm looking through at these people. I don't recognise any faces. I think they're either media or important people in the New Zealand board. But they're in the Christchurch Convention Centre at the moment. Thoughts on Caleb Clark making the squad? If his rib is fine, I would 100% have him in my squad. And I know that causes split opinions, but I feel like some people are very harsh on Caleb Clark. Because, it's one of those ones that he's had a good season. Money has decided that he wants to abuse people, even though he hasn't even got his real name as his YouTube handle. We have got there Reece Clark, Ioane, Jordan, D-Mac, Pirafetta, surely. What time is it being named? So, sounds like about 12 minutes. Maybe actually less, about 8 minutes time is when they are going to have it. Line time, no chat. How are you, brother? Says Kyle there. Doing very well, mate. But yeah, looking through at the season stats for Caleb Clark. I've got to remember, this is a guy that a lot of people don't want to see in the All Blacks. Ladies and gentlemen, these are his stats from this year. He's played 15 games and averaged 74 minutes out there on the field. He's scored 10 tries. He's had 155 runs with 1,230 running meters for the season. He's beaten 51 defenders, 23 clean breaks, the most in the whole of the Super Rugby Pacific competition. He's had 3 try assists. He's had an 83% tackling completion, which is actually a little bit higher than a lot of people do give him credit for. Yes, it's not in the 90s, but just as a bit of a comparison, someone who a lot of people are picking to make the All Blacks is Mark Telea, who has the exact same tackling percentage, but he's made a lot less tackles. Well, not a lot less. He's had 8 less throughout the season. But Caleb Clarke, with the exception of offloads and defenders beaten, does beat Mark Telea in a lot of stats from this season, and Mark Telea has played a few more minutes. I should also mention the handling errors. Mark Telea has dropped the ball 15 times, Caleb Clarke only 9. Mark Telea has conceded 9 penalties, Caleb Clarke only 6. And Telea should be at 100%. See, it's interesting, isn't it? Because Caleb Clarke, I feel like a lot of people are judging him on what he's done in the past. Caleb Clarke is bad on defence. He's the same as Mark Telea in the stats, except he's made more tackles. So, you know, it's one of those ones. Let's look at Sean Stevenson, for instance, in his defensive stats. We're talking about a guy who should possibly, if he does get selected, should be at fullback. So far throughout the season, he's got 79% of his tackles. So he has less than Caleb Clarke. We look at someone like a Ruben Love for the Hurricanes, who's at 15. He's made 70% of his tackles. We look at Rieko Ioane. I'd like to think he should be higher than Caleb Clarke. He's made 80%. So who's his defence worse then? Because everyone who we just read out there, who everyone is saying is going to make the All Blacks, or at least has a good shot, has a lower tackling percentage than Caleb Clarke. We have there, Clarke is not international standard. His father was lucky to get 10 tests in another era when they are short of class in the centre, says Shane. But once again, if we're basing it off form, which a lot of people want to see this All Black side selected off, Robertson will look at that season from Caleb Clarke and all of the standout stats that he's got. Stats can be misleading though sometimes. I mean, they always say stats don't lie. Yes, sometimes they can be fabricated a little bit, but, you know, it's looking pretty decent in terms of his chances, but the rib might be the difference. Do you think missed tackle percentage totally doesn't factor in the fact that some players might not be fit enough to get themselves in a position? Oh, they've already started. I should probably go back, ladies and gentlemen. Right, here we go. The All Blacks lineup, ladies and gents, is just being announced now, so we will read them out as they go. Here we go. I heard Scott Barrett's name was the first one. Here we go. She's going to tell us it. She's just speaking Māori at the moment. She's about to start, though. She is about to say it for the All Blacks. Clarke and Seve are the best wingers in New Zealand. Now, this will be in alphabetical order as well, I should mention, ladies and gentlemen. So just be sure to keep that in mind. Who's number 5 for the Blues? Sam Darry is the one that you are talking about. See, I thought she was just given a speech, which she was, and then she randomly said Scott Barrett. Right, here we go. All Black squad, ladies and gentlemen, for 2024. 32 men, 18 forwards, 14 backs. Here we go. We're going to put on the second eardrum as well. In alphabetical order. Asafo Moore, the first name for the Hurricanes. Beauden Barrett, he has made his way in, ladies and gentlemen. Jordie Barrett, might as well make it a trio while you're at it. Scott Barrett, there we go. So the 3 Barretts and Asafo Moore are in the side. George Bell, the bolter. Ethan Blackadder, Crusaders, seeing a trend. Finlay Christie, done enough throughout the last few weeks to get himself in, and Caleb Clarke is also in the squad. Ethan de Groot of the Highlanders, the Southland boy. Summer Penny Finau, more than likely taking on that 6th jersey. Rieko Ioane, which means Noah Kira. Luke Jacobson makes it into the side. Anton Leonard-Brown for the Chiefs. He has had one of his best seasons ever. Tyrell Lomax for the Hurricanes. Damian McKenzie, he is in there. Not many Blues boys yet. Imoni Narawa, he is in. Fletcher Null. So we're up to ends at the moment. Dalton Papali'i for the Blues. Made a lot of tackles throughout the season. TJ Perenara, he is in for the Hurricanes. Stephen Perofeta. Oh, what? Oh, that's interesting. Billy Proctor, he has made it into the squad. This is sounding like Quinta Pai is going to miss out. Cortez Aratama. Sevu Reece. Adi Savia, I was just doing the alphabet in my head. Wallace Satiti, the bolter. This means we aren't seeing Peter Lakai in the side, ladies and gentlemen. Cody Taylor. Mark Talia? Yes, he is in the side. I've chosen all the wingers that I said in my original video that I got a lot of stick for. Patrick Tuipulotu, there was a name I missed because I was talking. Ofa Tuangafasi, he's going to be there as well. Tupo Vai, was there no Satutu or am I deaf? Tamaiti Williams. Yeah, I didn't hear that name in between before Tuipulotu, which could have been... Is there no Satutu? I've missed Hoskins Satutu, ladies and gentlemen. Injury? Maybe. Ricky Riccatelli is not there. They went with George Bell, Asafa Moore, and also Cody Taylor as the three. But yeah, interesting. So we've got, also for the props, the one that I missed was Pasilio Tosi, who made his way in. That is definitely a bolter in terms of that forward back. So in terms of the forwards, the hookers are Asafa Moore, Cody Taylor, and George Bell on debut gets the opportunity. For the props, Ethan de Groot, Tyrell Lomax, Fletcher Newell, also Pasilio Tosi. So they've only gone with 3 locks. They actually went with the extra propping option for this year. Ofa Tuangafasi and also Tamaiti Williams. And there as well, loose forwards, Ethan Blackadder, Sama Penny-Finau, Luke Jacobson, Dalton Papali'i, Adi Savia, Wallace Satiti. No Hoskins Satutu, no Peter Lakai, no Braden Yossi, no Cullen Grace in the loose forwards. For the locks, they've just gone with Scott Barrett, Tupavai, and Patrick Tuipulotu. No Sam Derry, and also no Quinton Strange. Then for the backline, which hopefully they will show us again very soon, although it sounds like, there we go, Geordie Barrett, Rico Ioane, Anton Leonard-Brown, Billy Proctor. So there is no Quinn Tupaia. In the outside backs, Caleb Clark, Amoni Narua, Stephen Petafeta, Sevu Reece, and Mark DeLeo. I was called an idiot for selecting all 4 of those men, yet all of them have somehow made it into the squad. Halfbacks, Finley Christie, TJ Perenara, Cortez Ratama. So Finley Christie came in rather than Falau Fakatava, and then first fives, Damien McKenzie and Bowden Barrett. No Harry Plummer, even though he had a massive performance throughout this year for the Blues. So we will get that up on the screen so that you guys can also see who has made it into the side, ladies and gentlemen. But do let me know your thoughts. What do you think about Hoskins Satutu being the tied for the most tries throughout a season, but doesn't make it into the All Black squad? I should also mention, we do not get to see Sam Cane. He is the only one of the overseas players who did not make his way into the squad. Is Geordie going to the Blues, or did he stuff it up? Says Fresh in there, or sorry, Fresh Man, I should say. And youngest All Blacks, and Narua, Reece, Clark, Talia for the wingers. Says Jolie there, this is an interesting squad. Says Grant, and Wallace Satiti. Yeah, that man has played his way into the All Blacks with the way that he has been going as of late. But certainly a couple big calls in there. Some players maybe a little bit unlucky to miss out. We have Good at England win the series, says Fred. And why does the coach not name his team? It's weird, isn't it, that they don't really have him going on? No Harry Plummer. WTF is the comment there. And the chat from James Martin. But what we will quickly do, ladies and gentlemen, is we will put the squad up on the screen just so that everyone is able to see it once again here. There we go. That is the squad that they have gone with. I'm sorry that it's so small, but that is the best that we could do on the short notice. Scott Barrett as captain, Adi Savia vice captain. In fact, no, it is, well, yes, and also Geordie Barrett as the other vice captain, I should say. And Razor we trust as a Blues fan. Plummer was awesome. That's not unlucky. That's unfair, says Danny in there. And how do you leave out Hoskins Satutu, says the boy. They must have a plan for that number 8 jersey, and it does seem like Hoskins Satutu is not a part of that. Although we also can't stipulate too much now. Maybe there's an injury, you know, so we got to make sure that we're not starting rumours saying that Razor doesn't like Hoskins or anything like that. There are normally situations that cause certain players to miss out, so we have to wait and see what the injury news are. Razor doesn't rate Akira and Hoskins. Very interesting, says Grant. Well, Akira Ioane had 3 good games this season, so that's probably understandable. Also, he's going to Japan next year, so yeah, I don't think he was ever really going to get in, but Hoskins Satutu's probably one that people were a bit surprised. No, well, Jordan, that is because he is injured. So that is why he's been left out. I believe he's maybe going to be there for the Rugby Championship or the November Internationals, I think is his best chance of making his way in. It's going to be between Plummer, Perofeta and Love. I guess Stevie won out of that battle, says Laser Kiwi. And it's quite interesting that they did go with Stephen Perofeta. But once again, it might actually be from the fact that Stevenson and Ruben Love both nursing injuries. We've got to remember there are certain players that had very tough seasons. He's got an injured knee, Ruben Love. Stevenson has the injured hamstring, I believe it was. Test says Nov Mum there, and Sotutu is not international standard, along with the lazy Ioane and Moneyball is what we are playing now. Stats are king, says Andy Surfer. And there as well, and Plummer is too old not to look forward to the next World Cup, or got to look forward to the next World Cup. Too few locks, says Eugene. Yeah, my original squad prediction, I picked 5 locks because I had the option of Scott Barrett playing at number 6. And yeah, I cut it down to 4 in my next prediction. I think my original prediction was actually way better than my slightly pressured next prediction, if that makes sense. Sotutu is going for Operation Bro. He's my missus's cousin. Well, there we go. So that is why Hoskins Sotutu is not there. No sort of like hate type thing going on behind the scenes. The other thing this tells me is Razorbacks female is lock cover. Says a laser there. Yeah, and it'll be a very decent option for the extra lock. Because that's the thing, like Tupavai, the other side of things is he can also play 6. Where's Braden Yossi? Yeah, he missed out. Peter Lakai missed out, which I think were 2 that I was really hoping would at least get some sort of chance of making their way in. Harry Plummer missing is a disappointment. Well, we've got to hope that Beauden Barrett certainly steps up. I mentioned how I didn't want Barrett's inclusion to be at the expense of Plummer, and that's exactly what it was. Where's Duplessis Karifi? He's a bit of a penalty magnet, unfortunately, at times. Yes, he gets some great turnovers, but he does give away a lot, and 75% of stats get made up on the spot, so they say. Says Andy Surfer, not convinced with TJ. His soccer antics in the semi was off-putting, says Josh there. And also West Indies, or South Africa, won by 3 wickets in the end for that match. And g'day, brother. You may remember a group of us at Waikato Hospital this time last year waiting on heart surgery. Well, I'm back, brothers and sisters. It is great to see you, Anthony. That was about the same time as well, I believe. The bench options in the forward look a bit shaky. Says Grant and Beauden Barrett didn't perform well last year, but we'll see. Where's Richie Mo'unga? He is still in Japan in terms of his contract, so that's why he is unavailable. That is the same with the likes of a Shannon Frizzell, who I know a lot of other people maybe thought would get a chance in that number 6 jersey at some stage, but that is due to his prior commitments to his other side. Ioane easily outplayed the Chiefs Lucy's. I mean, he did, but that was probably his best game of the season. Other than that, though, he has had a lot of mistakes. And, you know, the fact that he's going to Japan as well, maybe there's not much of a future for him in New Zealand rugby. No Sotutu, says Stuart Moore. Yeah, although someone who said that their wife's cousin's dog told them that Sotutu's having surgery. So we've got to take their word for it, of course, because everything you hear on the internet is true. So we'll wait to find out whether or not that's actually the case. Perofeta, our only specialist fullback, is a worry. Well, that's the thing. They say specialist fullback. He's also a fly half, though, isn't he? So is he the specialist option? But they have listed him as an outside back. I was curious to know whether or not they'd list Beauden Barrett as one, but they did list him as a fly half option. Why Scott Barrett, captain, not Artie Savia, says Marnus. I couldn't tell you. I don't know. But I'm sure we'll find out at some stage. Beauden is living on the past, or on his past, says Brian. Who's the other lock? So they've just got the 3, but then Summer Penny Finau can cover lock. So that is why they've gone with that split, which does seem quite surprising to me just because of the amount of lock injuries that we saw last year. George Bell, eye on the future? I believe so. I mentioned about it in my original video. Like, George Bell, he's only going to be mid-20s at the next Rugby World Cup, whereas Ricky Riccatelli, who I think was the other option that they could have gone with, did actually end up, you know, he would have been 33, somewhere around there. And my brother's wife's mother said Sotutu has been abducted by aliens, says Shane. Well, hopefully he does come back down and doesn't get probed too much, so he is rearing to go for the Bunnings NPC, although if he has got an injury, of course, he will not be playing in that competition. We have got their better defence than Finau, says Rodeo there, and Satiti can't play under pressure. I disagree. Wait, unless you're talking about Sotutu. Are you saying Sotutu or Satiti? Because Satiti has stepped up in the last maybe 3 or 4 games where the Chiefs have been under the most pressure. he has actually been at his strongest. In that final, he made about 18 tackles throughout that game. He had, I believe, close to the most running meters out of any Chiefs player, or at least in the 4-pack anyway. And he just seems to be able to get that go forward in important moments. So I do think that the selection of Satiti is a very good one. Where's Will Jordan? He is injured, so that is why he is not there in the squad. Hasn't played a single minute of Super Rugby Pacific throughout this season because he has been injured throughout. And good-looking squad. Scott Barrett, I'm sure, will be a capable captain. Tossie is a bolter. How do you rate him? I mean, he's been handy enough for the Hurricanes. Interesting that they've gone with him rather... Well, that's the thing. It's probably either him or Ta'aval with them going with an extra tight head prop. But we'll have to see how it goes. I feel like it's not a bad shout. My slight concern, I guess now Tamaiti is going to be a loose head prop, I would assume, in terms of for this season, because he can play both sides, but I'd assume they'll go with the 3-3. And Satiti is a star of the future. Razor will take him to his potential, and Satiti can play under pressure. Best Chiefs Lucy on Saturday in the back. Peddling pack counted 20 tackles, says Takana Wa in there, and Tossie is a bolter. And who will get first crack at fullback? I think that it seems like it's going to be Stephen Perofeta, doesn't it? As the All Blacks 15. And that's intriguing. I hope it works. I'm curious to see how it goes with the selection, I'll be honest, because I don't think I would have... Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I'm going to be doing a video in the near future where I give my All Blacks XV, who I would have in the starting side, but there's a few interesting decisions that will need to be made for the series up against the English. But nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for being here as well. It is greatly appreciated you all hanging around for this live stream. We are, of course, going to be doing the video coming out in the very near future of us telling you guys exactly who has made the squad and everything along those lines, what to look out for in the near future. Lomax, one of the most understated but important picks for the squad, says Lupa Red. And there was a moment where it did seem like maybe he was going to be injured. Unfortunately, like early on in the season, it didn't seem like he was going to be able to come back, but he looks good now, and it looks like he will be raring to go. Bodie will be 15. Yeah, although they've listed Bowden as a fly half rather than listing him as a outside back. Now, I would assume if it was going to be that Bowden was starting at 15, I would have had Bowden listed as an outside back and then had Perofeta as the guy in the fly half listing. So, yeah, I'm curious to see what way around they go with it. What's the logic between two vice captains? Well, normally vice means that you're not in charge, so you normally have two of them. But I guess that's just to spread it around a little bit, and maybe because there's going to be rotation in the squad. Maybe times we won't see Geordie Barrett as the 12. Maybe we see Anton Leonard-Brown take that inside centre jersey. So having the vice captain, I feel like it's a good idea. At the end of the day, Razor always talked about it for his Crusaders, how he's trying to build that environment of everyone feels like they do have a role and everyone's involved. So I feel like that might also be why they've got vice captains here as well, so that they can have, kind of like that team environment of everyone feels like, you're going to have a group of them who are all talking about what the tactics are and what the plans are, rather than just having one-on-one with Scott Barrett. I assume that Geordie Barrett maybe, I don't want to rumour anything, maybe he is the more intelligent of the two Barretts that are in the captaincy, so he's got to relay the message to Scott, and then Scott will relay it to him, and he will translate to Scott Robinson. Sujutu robbed. He might be injured though, so we can't say he's robbed till we know whether or not he's actually all right. If he isn't injured, I'm sure he will feel pretty hard done by. But if he is injured and he needs surgery of some sort, like someone said that he does, it was their best friend's second wife's brother's cat's friend, I think you said it. So we'll wait and see whether or not that is the case. But yeah, interesting squad. So like I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we will be doing a video very soon on the channel where we do look through at the squad and give our exact thoughts on what we think of it. And nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning in. We may even do a video as well, seeing as there's quite a few players that some people feel are hard done by. We may even do a video of maybe the top 5 players who were unlucky to miss out on All Black selection. We'll bring that out in the next few days. But nonetheless, I do thank you all very much for tuning in. If you did enjoy, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, of course, because we're going to be doing all the All Blacks games on the channel. We're going to be doing the lineups. We're going to be doing team predictions. Going to be doing the whole shebang. So if you are new, be sure to hit that subscribe button. But thank you all very much for tuning in, and I will see you all for the next one.